Israel propaganda under the guise of being pro-Palestinian to your relatively progressive audience, then yeah, I think that's a bridge too far. That was the exact same reason as to why that was the exact same reason why I talked about Destiny as well after years and years of Destiny coming after me. Not because I was afraid of covering Destiny, but because I didn't give a shit. Fuck them. Who cares? But the moment that you start defending a country that does stuff like this, an army that does shit like this, okay? Yeah, it's ridiculous. Ironically, at the time, I didn't think Ethan was a hardcore Zionist. A famous clip of me telling directly to his face, "There's only so much I can do about moderation when you're coming across like you're defending Israel," is from an argument where he called JVP Live capos. Nice try playing the genocide card, scumbag. You can't hide behind your advocacy. Bitch, you're hiding behind Instagram stories. You can't even talk to me in person. I'll go on your fucking stream. I guess what is frustrating with Ethan is that he has reached out to people who know their stuff on Palestine, like Ilan Pape. At least you've had people who know more about this volatile issue on stream. That's what I mean. Ethan Klein is afraid of anti-Zionist Jews, okay? He's afraid of anti-Zionists in general, but he is certainly afraid of anti-Zionist Jews because if he talks to an anti-Zionist Jew, okay, they're going to be like, yeah, dog, you're fucking insane. And he's going to freak the fuck out. That's why, if you noticed, half the clips that he fucking uses are literally clips where I'm sitting next to Alex, Lol Overruled, Noah Culwin, or Felix Biederman. Why does he never talk about Felix Biederman or Noah Culwin? Because he can't call them anti-Semites, okay? He hasn't reached that stage of Zionism yet. It's much harder to present someone who is an anti-Zionist Jew as an anti-Semite to your audience of not super well-informed, but relatively progressive individuals. He hasn't watched Bad Hosbury yet? Yeah. Yeah, no talking to Matt Lieb. What's up with that? He calls them tokens? Yeah, I wonder how that would go if he did that directly to the faces of people. He said I was tokenizing Sam. Yeah. Ridiculous. I know for a fact that other content creators also see all this shit, but they don't say anything because they don't want to fucking draw the ire of his rabid fan base who will go after and harass people endlessly. Okay. Classic. Hold on. I gotta take Kaya out.
A few of the racist lies Ethan tells in defense of Israel's apartheid regime and their
I don't know what this video is, but hold on. I'm gonna be back in a second. I gotta take Kaya out.
Think that Jews as an ethnic minority in Israel would not be safe?
Jews are the ethnic majority in the UN-recognized territory of Israel. They've been the majority ever since Zionist forces captured 80% of historic Palestine between 47 and 49. In that time, Zionist forces ethnically cleansed 80% of the indigenous population of Palestine. And ever since, Jews have lived as a privileged class in an apartheid state.
After all, Israel is a country of refugees. If the Jews didn't come from Europe after the Holocaust, they came from the surrounding Arab countries.
Jewish settlement and colonization of Palestine.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about when he said like 1 million Jews were forcibly expelled from surrounding Arab nations. Like, how ridiculous to make that comparison to the fucking Nakba while simultaneously undermining the crime of ethnic displacement of over 750,000 Palestinians. Ridiculous. Pro-Palestine my ass. Once again, I ask everyone, is Ethan Klein stupid and not knowledgeable about the history of this country that he's defending? Or is he in bad faith doing propaganda? Historical revisionism. expulsions that were planned according to Israeli, well, I believe he's no longer an Israeli citizen, but Israeli scholar Ilan Pape were planned. Okay. They were planned. The expulsions were planned. Okay. They did a lot of violence in villages that had cooperative agreements with surrounding Israeli villages, specifically so that it would be easier to forcibly expel the other Palestinian villagers in other villages and also large cities. This was all a plan before the inception of the Israeli nation state. This is a fact that even people who are now pro Israel, like historian Benny Morris, agrees to. This is an established fact amongst the new historians in Israel. Okay? The difference between someone like Benny Morris, however, and someone like Ilan Pape or Avi Shleim is that Benny Morris establishes that fact and says now that it was good that it happened. It had to happen. Okay? There is a major difference between that and working on Avi Shleim, another Iraqi Israeli historian, Avi Shleim, and his work on the matter of what happened to the Jews in Iraq specifically, where the Israeli government literally blew up synagogues in an effort to create pressure amongst the Iraqi Jewish population. Many of these Arab nations did not want the Jewish populations to leave. Okay, they either cut separate agreements with outside pressure if they were, under the protectorate of France, for example, or cut deals specifically with the state of Israel. And on top of that, there was still a lot of violence that Israeli citizens, or not Israeli citizens, Jews experienced in these countries due to pan-Arabic nationalism at the time, and also due to the violence that the early Zionist brigades enacted upon the Palestinian villagers. Okay? The notion that this is in any way, shape, or form comparable to the planned expulsion of 750,000 Palestinians from their ancestral homelands is fucking ridiculous. It is akin to genocide denial. Okay? The fact that, maybe Ethan doesn't know that, to be fair. To be fair to him, maybe Ethan does not know that. Okay? But he should not be so confident in saying something so ridiculous, such as the expulsion of Jews from Arab countries, from surrounding Arab countries, was worse than the Nakba. Okay? Incredible. Incredible levels of stupidity. Why is it that Palestinian organizations have actually, in their negotiations process and on numerous different instances, advocated for Israelis to have a right to return to surrounding Arab nations? Now, remember, these surrounding Arab nations are not Palestinian, okay? Just make no mistake, because I know that a lot of Zionists like to say all Arabs are the same. They are not, okay? Each individual nation is different than one another, okay? Just so you understand. But the Palestinian delegation has time and time again advocated for Jews to be able to return back to Morocco if they choose to do so, or return back to Iraq or Afghanistan or any other Arab nation where Jews used to live. The Israeli government is not on board with that. I wonder why. Thank you for the 50 gifted subs, Haplois.
Palestine began in the 1800s, well before World War II, and the refugees to which Ethan refers actively participated in massacring and ethnically cleansing the indigenous population of Palestine. The point Ethan is making is akin to claiming that the white Afrikaners of South Africa or pilgrims in America who arrived as poor people with nowhere else to go should be seen as victims despite their colonization of the land and extermination of the indigenous population.
Can you please elaborate on how Nakba is worse than the expulsions from Middle Eastern countries? My Jewish best friend does the exact same argument. I already did. One is a planned expulsion through terror of ethnic Palestinians from their ancestral homelands that Israel wanted to develop a nation state on top of. The other is literally goaded by the Israeli state because it benefits their settler colonial agenda. Okay? And yes, there were expulsions on top of that, or not expulsions necessarily, but there were crimes, hate crimes against Jews that took place too, of course, born out of the violence that all of these other Arab nations had seen the early Zionist brigades bring on top of the Palestinian population. But the notion that this was like an instantaneous response and that there was mass purges that took place all around the Levant is ridiculous. It was not planned and prepared. And in many instances, Israel itself, because it suited their purpose of settler colonialism, actually urged these governments to expel the Jewish populations. The governments themselves did not want to expel their Jewish populations. Here is Iraqi British Israeli historian Avi Shalem, one of the new historians from Israel, explaining this. Okay, he wrote an entire fucking book on the subject matter. If Ethan, being someone who is pro-Palestinian and having this massive audience, wanted to actually educate himself on the history of the ridiculous apartheid state that he's trying to defend, poorly, mind you, he could just as easily search this information. So the question remains, why won't he search this information? Why does he go on the attack, especially against others who he knows are not anti-Semitic, people like myself, okay? While there is a sea of anti-Semitism out there, why does he single out someone who has actively combated anti-Semitism over and over again?
Jews were convinced that Israel had a hand in uprooting them. After the 1948 war, there was mounting popular hostility towards the Jews in Iraq. 5 bombs exploded in Jewish sites. The series of bombs created a panic which led more and more Jews to register to leave the country. I met an elderly friend of my mother's, an Iraqi Jew called Yaakov Karkukli, who had been in the Zionist underground. One member of his group, Yosef Basri, a very, very intelligent Jewish lawyer, and his assistant, Shalom Saleh Shalom, were responsible for 3 out of the 5 bombs. Basri's controller was an Israeli intelligence officer named Max Binet, who was based in Tehran.
The Arab expulsions were beneficial for the Israeli state's settler colonial project. Okay? Each individual country has a different history and a different association. But the claim that this was widespread, anti-Semitism after Jews had lived in these countries under the protectorate of the Ottoman Empire for fucking centuries is ridiculous. Okay? Because under the Ottoman Empire, Jews had the same rights that Christians did. It was seen as a safe haven for Jews. That's why there are so many Jewish people that historically lived in these Arab nation states. Okay? The idea that like there was mass expulsions or mass pogroms occurring in the Levant is ahistorical. Okay? And if you were to turn around and say, oh, well, they had to pay a tax, jizya, okay? Christians did too. Most of the problems against Jewish people under the Ottoman Protectorate actually came from Christians regardless. It is ahistorical and fucking ridiculous. This is Ottoman propaganda. These people treated us as second-class citizens in our own country. Okay. First of all, once again, chatter, it's not Ottoman propaganda. It's historical Jewish propaganda then, okay? Because the Ottoman Empire was broadly seen as a safe haven for Jews because Jews were victims of pogroms in the Christian Western European nations, in Europe in general. That is just the truth. And in terms of being considered a second class citizen, okay, it is the exact same for non Muslims across the board. I'm not saying this was the most woke, but in comparison to the fucking Inquisition, yeah, it was infinitely better. The notion that there was unimaginable anti Semitism happening in comparison to the fucking Inquisition is ahistorical. Okay? Coexistence with Jews wasn't because of the Ottoman rule, it was under the Arab Caliphate too. Yes. Muslims also paid a tax. They paid a different tax. History of Jews in the Ottoman Empire. Yeah. The existence of Jews in the Ottoman Empire is particularly significant because the region provided a principal place of refuge for Jews driven out of Western Europe by massacres and persecution. Anyway, this isn't a defense of the shit that the Ottoman Empire did. Of course, they're a fucking empire, all right? But in comparison to, it was on the Jewish Chronicle too. What did the Ottoman Empire ever do for us? Quite a lot, in fact. Contrary to the prevailing view, the Turkish civilization had an egalitarian, multicultural outlook which protected Jews. Anyway, before people say, oh, you only read the fucking headlines, I've read this entire article on stream before, okay? Regardless, the only reason why I brought this up is because a lot of people falsely say that there is like a historic ancient anti-Semitism among the Arab nations, okay? This is not correct. This is completely incorrect. It's a relatively new phenomena that the Western world has very openly passed the torch on after their historic anti-Semitism and their pogroms and the Holocaust. Now they, even in Germany, claim that the woke Muslim radicals are actually bringing anti-Semitism to Germany. Ridiculous.
In fact, there was more Jews displaced than Palestinians during the Nakba. 1 million Jews.
There is zero.
Yeah, I could not believe this is what I meant. This is like insane.
Factual basis to this statement. The Nakba is the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, which took place between 47 to 49. There was no mass displacement of Jews during the Nakba approaching anything close to 1 million Jews. Jewish emigration from Muslim countries occurred over the course of decades, and Middle Eastern Jews were not expelled by their respective governments or through military force.
The Arab countries got super anti-Semitic against their own Jewish citizenry that had nothing to do with Israel. And as a result, they kicked them
That
all
had nothing to do with Israel. Like, what are you talking about? People voluntarily left to go to Israel. Like, what do you mean? It's not the entire story, but Jesus Christ.
out, 1,000,000 plus of them, and forced them to go the one place they hated the most, Israel. And now those same people that forced them out of their homes are telling them they don't belong there. So if the Jews of Israel are surrounded by Islamic military...
So this also is a really funny point that he made in his content puke, where he brings up Hezbollah and Hamas. Jews are surrounded by their enemies. What the fuck is Hezbollah or Hamas in 1948? Both Hamas and Hezbollah were developed as well, not even Hezbollah, but Hamas initially was a literal Islamic charity that turned into a resistance group against Israel. Hezbollah developed as a resistance group against Israeli occupation. Okay? Many, many decades after Israel was even created as a violent settler colonial enterprise. Okay? Absolutely ridiculous statement. Incredibly ahistorical. And not only that, but I'll take it one step further. Okay? In terms of Hamas being a Muslim Brotherhood carve-out and an Islamic charity, Israel itself tilted the scales in Hamas's favor numerous times. Why did Israel do that? Because they correctly predicted that, well, not completely correctly, but they predicted that they would be easier to dominate. They would be easier to destroy because they would be able to get very little Western support as opposed to the secular, Christian, and socialist resistance groups that were under the PLO. Israel tilted the scales in Hamas's favor time and time again because they were worried that the Western world was too sympathetic to the plight of Palestinians when the Palestinians that were speaking about their own victimhood, their real victimhood in the hands of Israel, happened to be socialist, secular socialist, leftist Palestinians. Israel assassinated all of those leaders, okay, including Ghassan Kanafani, who very famously never even held a fucking gun. Him and his family members, immediate family members. Now, why would Hezbollah form in Lebanon? Maybe because Israel expelled Palestinians into Lebanon, members of the PLO into Lebanon, and then Israel decided to invade Lebanon. And the Lebanese population was like, okay, well, we have to fight back. What the fuck is this shit? And that's how Hezbollah came into the equation. None of this was there when Israel was invented. And Israel's inception is a violent one. It's just cry, bully, perceived victimhood nonsense. This is pure pro-Israeli propaganda. It's historical revisionism, and it's ridiculous. If you have done any reading whatsoever on the inception of the Israeli state or the inception of the resistance against the Israeli violence in numerous countries around Israel, you would know that this is a ridiculous thing to point to.
Terrorist groups.
Ethan racistly suggests that all Arabs and Muslims should be regarded as the same people. Hamas and Hezbollah never forced Jews out of their homes and did not even exist at the time of the Nakba. These resistance groups formed under Israeli occupation as Israeli forces brutalized, massacred, and dominated their people.
By the way, oh yeah, keep sucking Hamas dick, bitch. I know. Keep refusing to learn about fucking history, man. Keep refusing to learn about history. The funniest part about this is that I have probably poured countless hours of not only research, but commentary by directly talking to academics as well All of that is readily available on my YouTube. You can watch any number of different videos, okay? But instead, you just plug your ears and go, la, 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 I can't hear you. Okay, it's fine. It's hilarious hearing shit like that when you know anything about medieval history and know how even Al-Andalus in the 700s was noted for giving Jews protections to the point of where most Jews migrated there from Christian kingdoms, which led to a golden age law. Being a historian fucking sucks, man. Yeah. Where does he get his info from? I don't know. I have no idea what his fucking sources are for. It's just him retelling Israeli history.
Is it really that crazy for them to not feel safe as an ethnic minority, even a
Oh man, the poor Israelis, the ethnic minority. Amazing. Yeah, I wonder why Israelis feel unsafe in this area. You can either look at the situation and go, it's because everyone around us is anti Semitic and they just hate Jews. Or you can recognize the reality that has unfolded in very obvious ways over the course of the past 15 fucking months. Because this is not the first time Israel's behaved in an insanely violent manner. After all, the inception of the Israeli state was a violent one. I'm a third generation historian, and I've come to the realization that you can educate people on any piece of history, and when they hear one thing they don't like, they just lick their own balls and tune things out. Yeah. Wasn't the whole thing that Israelis don't feel safe? Yeah, of course. This is literally the mindset. Yeah. Israel and Zionism, in its contemporary interpretation, or even in its historical inception, has always been a ethno-religious supremacist project. This is why I say Zionism is a fascist ideology. Okay? You can masquerade it as perceived victimhood. You can masquerade it as serious security concerns, but that is the reality. And that is precisely what the Nazis did as well. Okay? Nazi ideology didn't just fucking magically exist one day and everyone was like, all right, I guess we hate the Jews now. No, it was a carefully crafted dehumanization mechanism that inevitably led to the Holocaust. Okay? For years and years, Nazis first dehumanized Jews with already the existing historical anti-Semitism in the region. Okay? And beyond that, they obviously made security concerns all the fucking time. They kept erroneously claiming that Jews were a parasitic force that was dominating both the aspects of labor through trade unions and through Judeo-Bolshevism, but also simultaneously they were controlling the money supply in the highest state of society, and also the academia, because they were elites that were making Germany a morally degenerate hellhole to undermine German superiority. This was the argument. We look back at that argument and say, well, that was fucking ridiculous that they said that. Except the lesson that you're supposed to learn from that is to not repeat it. Okay? You're supposed to understand how ridiculous and how violent that endeavor ended up, and then go, we should definitely not repeat that ever again. Instead of repeating the same fucking talking points, but instead of saying it about Jewish people, you now say it about fucking Arabs. It's ridiculous. Nazis made arguments about their own security considerations as well. It was erroneous. It was ridiculous.
A little bit.
Israel is by far the most aggressive state in the Middle East, constantly seizing land from neighboring countries and waging large-scale massacres. Israel itself has not withstood anything resembling the level of violence it has brought against the people of Palestine, Lebanon, and Syria. These are not the actions of a state that feels unsafe as an ethnic minority. These are the actions of a hyper-aggressive, expansionist European colony backed by the most powerful empires in history.
And that's pretty much the entirety of our disagreement.
This was not the entirety of Ethan's disagreements.
That's funny.
Ethan denied IDF war crimes like rapes.
How is this systemic rape as part of the institution of Israel?
And the bombing of hospitals.
And I'm relieved to say that it was looking like right now almost certainly not the IDF. And I think everybody should be relieved to know that. Ethan, this is extremely painful to hear. Well, I'm sorry that it's painful to you that the IDF didn't kill a bunch of people in that hospital. My condolences to you. You're spreading propaganda, Ethan. You're a fucking moron.
Ethan and his wife, Ela, who served in the IDF, bragged about Ela invading the West Bank and terrorizing the local population.
A base that was far from my house. So you go there for the whole week. It was kind of like just more of an adventure. They would go every night on a raid.
Right.
In Armada. So one time I wanted to go with them just to
Every sentence he says is fact checked. Yeah, literally every single thing he mentioned is wrong. I could not believe it. I'm not talking about this piece here, but
experience it.
By the way, service is mandatory in Israel. Okay, I want to point that out. And as someone with a fuck ton of veterans in his community, I've always been understanding of people who have gone and served in the American military, and I've even talked to IDF veterans as well. My problem is what you currently are saying, okay? Not what you have done in the past, but instead what you chose to do after. Because if you served, especially when there's, mandatory service, that's one thing. Your takeaway from that experience probably should be, just like the rest of the Breaking the Silence guys, holy fuck, what are we doing here? This is incredibly fucking violent, okay? If you are conflicted about your service, and you think that it was wrong, then that's one thing. If you're still to this day defending the Israeli occupying force and its actions and the Israeli government, and then every now and then claiming that it was, well, we have some disagreements with Israel, then yeah, you're defending Israel. Okay? It's additionally crazy that Ethan also spends more time after this. Okay? I'm not going to watch this whole thing. I don't care about this. Okay? But Ethan spends the rest of the fucking content puke, I believe, also repeatedly saying that the Yemeni teenager that I also thought might have been a Houthi, because everyone was calling him Timothy Chalamet, a fucking Houthi terrorist over and over again. Okay? That's what's so crazy about this, because if you're a random teenager in Yemen, okay, that other people have branded as a terrorist, when in the process of translation, he says some shit, okay, and then we all collectively misunderstand whether or not he actually took over the boats or not, okay, when we find out later that he did not do that, and that it's a fucking tourism destination. And considering that you're making this video a year after the fact, you had all of the time to fact check this stuff, okay, and you still keep calling this fucking 19-year-old in Yemen, who all he has ever known is genocide, by the way, with American weapons, led by the Saudi and UAE coalition, and you just keep calling him a terrorist over and over again because you saw him hold a gun or have one of those historic fucking knives that people in Yemen have. That's a little ridiculous, don't you think? Like, especially when you're talking about raiding Ramallah. He literally was with the hostages, bro. No, he wasn't, dumbass. He was not. He was not. That video is not even from the Galaxy Leader, okay? You're wrong. It doesn't matter. I don't even care. I don't even care if he was. That's the other problem here. Okay? I don't even care if he was a part of the Ansar Allah movement or if he was an active combatant. I would have interviewed him differently if he said he was. But having said that, what I care about is what I get angry about is people just like routinely lying about something that is so easily fucking verifiable. Okay? Anyway, what's the rest of this?
People's efforts.
Like
A lot of people. City.
Elah called.
feel like a normal neighborhood.
No, it actually looked like a nice city.
Elah called Yoav Gallant a really good guy after a year of overseeing a genocide.
Just the other day, Bibi fired.
Yes, they docked the ship and then they allowed the residents to come on board and tour it. Yes. The 19-year-old didn't actually fucking go out to sea and overtake the ship. Okay? Even if he did, like, he didn't tell me that, okay? What is this? Ethan Klein's community calls raids on families in the West Bank.
2 years that I served in.
Ethan Klein's community calls raids on families in the West Bank justify police action. The raids violate international law. They're meant to terrorize the population. H3 radicalizes viewers into racist extremists. Compare the soldiers' description of raids to Gila's. Because people keep bringing it up, here's a clip where Gila talks about the one raid she went on as a ride-along. No, she was not out there murdering people nightly. And Ethan and Gila even talk about how it was a complex situation. And while they were justified policing actions, they can also understand the fear and frustration of the Palestinians. This is from 2017, by the way, not new information. Yeah, justified police
the West
action.
Bank, which is very different than defending Israel.
You can apply for it, and it's a
All the time.
Here.
In front of me was not any more human being. Yeah.
base that I liked. A base that was far from my house.
Were you revolted by what you had witnessed?
Yeah, definitely yes.
It was kind of like just more of an adventure.
Every Palestinian in front of me was not any more human being like me. Was an enemy, a potential terrorist.
You went on like a mission with them
Mm-hmm.
to like a terrorist city.
Yeah.
If Palestinians will get the feeling that the IDF is all the time everywhere, they'll be afraid to attack. So what do you do to give them this feeling? You make your presence felt. You start your night shift patrol.
They would go every night on a raid
Right.
in Ramallah. So one time I wanted to go with them just to experience it.
Break into a house, Palestinian house, of course. Not a house we have intelligence about. I'm the sergeant. I lead the patrol. I choose a random house.
I walked with them to one house.
Wake up the family, men one side, women the other side. Search the place. You can yourself imagine the dynamics, yeah?
You see people in the house, and then it's like the soldiers just walk into the house and look through their shit.
Jump from one roof to another. Come out through another house. Wake up the family. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It didn't stop.
Yeah, this is a practice of deliberately terrorizing the Palestinian population in occupied Palestinian territory in direct contravention of international law, just so you understand. Make no fucking mistake, okay? This practice was done specifically to terrorize the Palestinian population of Ramallah and to always be active, okay? To always, what's the term for it? There's a specific term for it, and I think he mentions it in this interview. I'm going to misremember it, but that right there is terror. That right there is purposely done to terrorize the civilian population of Palestinians. Okay? No, not panopticon. No, there is a specific military term for it. And no, mowing the lawn is the Israeli practice of blowing up Gaza. I forget what it's called. Anyway.
For 1 second.
Does it feel like a normal neighborhood?
No, it actually looked like a nice city.
The idea is that every Palestinian will feel the military is right here. It's to do what we call in the military, ליצור תחושת נרדפות, to create the feeling of being persecuted. This is not an action of a rogue soldier or officer. This is your mission. There is no way of doing it nice.
People are so easy to judge Hila for doing mandatory service in Israel, right? Everybody goes, I would have objected. I would have chosen to go to jail and be ostracized by society.
They took.
That's not even my expectation. Like, that's literally not my expectation. Okay? I have also literally talked to I've talked to people who refused to serve and even went to prison in Israel. Okay? Conscientious objectors like Tal, if you remember. And I've talked to IDF veterans as well, who then became conscientious objectors, who are members of the Israeli Knesset. For me, what you say now matters a lot more. Yeah.
Took me with them one time, even though they're not supposed to, because it was not my job. They did it just because I asked and I'm cute.
You asked and because you're cute?
Is it possible for an Israeli soldier to serve in the territories with a clear conscience?
I don't believe a soldier who served in the occupied territories has clean hands. It's not that every soldier murders innocent Palestinians, but no Israeli soldier who served in the occupied territories, his hands were clean after that. Because at the heart of what you do, there is no way of seeing Palestinians as equal human beings.
Anyway, the point is, this person is also an Israeli occupying force veteran, okay? But I have a lot of grace for people who understand what they did and then use that experience to warn others about what the Israeli occupying force is doing. This is what breaking the silence does. That is their entire job. Okay? Was the word you're looking for called mapping? No, it's when they go into a house and they just like fucking break into the house and turn it around, turn it over, and terrify the Palestinians in the house. I think it's called like an outpost. Like it's called like outposting or something. But the other term I was looking for is, yes, making their presence felt. That is the deliberate reason. Yeah. The point and purpose is making their presence felt. That's why they do it nightly. Anyway, it's a common practice within occupying forces. I mean, Americans do it too.
A really good guy that a lot of people are pissed about, and he fired him because they had a disagreement, and that's like so Trump coded.
Well, he was like a moderating voice in the war room.
Yeah.
Like even this stuff, like saying Yoav Golan is a moderating voice when he's literally charged by the International Criminal Court for being a fucking war criminal. Okay, I'm willing to entertain the notion that you just simply don't know. But my problem in that situation is like, you have a fucking massive audience, man. You have a massive audience. Don't you think you have a responsibility to at least learn the truth? What the fuck are you doing? It's crazy to me that Ethan did more research scouring the Sex Pestiny subreddit, looking for fucking clips out of context to create this like comprehensive argument that virtually no one, with the exception of his own fucking community and already pre-existing haters of mine, loved. Okay? The remaining members of his community. He spent more time researching that shit than reading a single fucking book about Israel.
You know, people's efforts to smear him because he wasn't like anti-genocide enough.
Fuck Joe Biden. Respectfully.
That's fine. I personally think he was actually a really good president. The funny thing about me, I don't like terrorism and I don't like terrorists. What is terrorism? It's intentionally targeting civilian population for political goals.
Oh, he's going to call out the IDF here, right? I assume.
Ethan and Hila literally bragged on their podcast about terrorizing Palestinians in the West Bank.
You see people in the house, and then it's like the soldiers just walk into the house and look through their shit.
Does it feel like a normal neighborhood?
No, it actually looked like a nice city.
Now, just how little rights do women in the Houthis' Yemen have? Well, according to this, there's been 1,181 violations committed by Houthi rebels against women.
According to this? What is this?
This was the other thing that I was going to mention. He just cynically puts article titles to beef up the actual argument that he's presenting. And virtually every argument, if you look at the year, you're like, wait a minute, 23/02/2021. That's an interesting time to be writing about Yemen and what the Houthis were doing in Yemen. And then you actually look at it, and it's fucking Saudi propaganda. Okay? Here, let's look this up. Yemen, women captives. Yemen, women captives recall ordeal in Houthi prisons. Where is it?
This. Ethan doesn't indicate the source of this information. Instead, he cites dubious, often Saudi-funded sources, making claims like the Houthis brought back slavery.
They brought back slavery.
We think the Houthis, Ansar Allah, is doing what Luffy would do.
The problem...
Wait, slavery in Yemen by Al Jazeera World? There is no way he posts that without actually looking at the video, right? Exclusive. Houthis restore slavery in Yemen. Anadolu Ajans. This is the Turkish state media. Yemen. Women captives recall ordeal in Houthi prisons. The 3 Yemen-based human rights organizations have accused Iran-backed Houthi rebels of committing civil rights violations amounting to war crimes. A joint report issued by these groups has documented 1,181 violations against women that include murder, torture, enforced disappearance, and sexual violence. Wessam Basindoa, director of the 8 March Yemeni Union Women, one of the authors of the report, said that women and children in particular suffered. The report aims to shed light on the types of violence. The report has documented 274 cases, quoting testimonies of released prisoners like Nazma Mohammed. The report claimed that she was kidnapped on March 24th, 2019 by Zainabiyat, a women's military group established by the Houthis. She's currently receiving treatment in Cairo. Bro, the video was a legit fact check. You're double fact checking. During the interrogations, providing coordinates for Arab coalition, being an agent of America in Israel, shocking facts about sufferings. Where does the report come from? What is the human rights group that has made this report? Because I know the exclusive Houthis restore slavery in Yemen article actually comes from a Saudi outlet. Like, this is literally just a random Saudi outlet that said that. Bad empanada fact check.
So I just want to make some shorter clips here, going over some of the most egregious parts of Ethan. An interesting claim, isn't it? So let's check Saudi-backed, because it's like citing the Yemen army saying this.
Yemen army removes 300,000 Houthi landmines in liberated areas. Slavery in Yemen is definitely like slavery by Saudi-backed elements being resisted by the Houthis law. Yeah, the slavery in Yemen, I'm pretty sure the Al Jazeera word slavery in Yemen video that came out was literally talking about how the Saudi-backed administration was doing slavery in Yemen and not the Houthis or the Ansar Allah that was doing slavery in Yemen.
With these claims is there's no credible, independent organization that...
Yeah, Al Jazeera one is from 2014 and is the group prior to the Houthis that did slavery. Like, if you look at this, it's from fucking 2014, dog. Slavery in Yemen. Despite government denials, this investigation uncovers evidence of slave labor in Yemen. It's in fucking 2014. You addressed this already, by the way? I think you forgot. No, I've addressed this thing that people fucking claim. And I'm not in the business of defending the Houthis anyway, with the exception of the actions that they took against the Israeli genocide. That's it. Having said that, however, oh yeah, this is the article that I remember, the Ashkar al-Awsat exclusive, Houthis restore slavery in Yemen. This is literally just a random fucking Saudi propaganda piece. that wrote this article while they were doing a genocide in Yemen. It is owned. It is a Saudi paper owned by Arabic International Newspaper, headquartered in London, a pioneer of the offshore model in Arabic press. The paper is often noted for its distinctive green-tinted pages. Although published under the name of a private company, Saudi Research and Marketing Group, the paper was founded with the approval of the Saudi royal family and government ministers and is noted for its support of the Saudi government. The newspaper is owned by Faisal bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, a member of the Saudi royal family. The article that he's using is literally a Saudi royal family owned propaganda paper that literally released this report literally while they were doing a famine in Yemen. Okay. They had a blockade and a man-made famine in Yemen. Thank God they were liberating the restoration of slavery in Yemen by killing everyone in fucking Yemen. Dude, wait, that's a weird coincidence. How can you be sure? What do you mean? Wait, wasn't he using the Turkish site? Yes, the Turkish site will also, the Turkish state apparatus is also going to fucking use the same sourcing. Remember, the Turkish government is a NATO government. Hello. The Turkish government is pro-Israel. Regardless of what Recep Tayyip Erdogan says, if you are unfamiliar with how these things work, for example, that's why you come to me and I describe to you how this stuff works, okay? That's my fucking job. What the Turkish government says and what the Turkish government does are entirely different things, okay? The Turkish government, for example, will claim to be anti-Israel, but the Turkish government will then still continue engaging in shipping with Israel, even after Recep Tayyip Erdogan, in order to quash the masses freaking the fuck out about their existing logistic chain, their supply chain with Israel, will then turn around. Yeah, the Saudi-aligned government of Yemen didn't flee to Riyadh until March of 2015. The Al Jazeera video came out in 2014. Exactly. Saudi Arabia also is a U.S. ally, by the way.
That has verified them. They come straight from Saudi state-funded media, which provides zero evidence to back their claims. To put this in context, the Saudis, with the support of the U.S. and UAE, spent a decade starving and massacring the Yemeni population. As they murdered hundreds of thousands of Yemeni people, Ansar Allah, also known as the Houthis, were the only resistance to the genocide of the Yemeni people. Yet Ethan uses Saudi state-funded propaganda to push the claim that Ansar Allah are the bad guys.
All right, so these guys are clearly the bad guys.
This is a truly lazy and low-effort form of propaganda. Ethan shows a handful of substanceless headlines about the Houthis published by the same...
Yeah. Also, here's Aldan Marki, who is a Yemen researcher, by the way. I don't want to entertain this whole Houthi slavery nonsense, but it's been going on far too long that I feel compelled to address what is always admitted: historical context and socioeconomic nuance. Yemen is an incredibly poor country, has been so for most of its modern existence. Yemen was never actually allowed to develop as a cohesive, centralized state because the colonial powers in Saudi Arabia saw an interest in boosting and bolstering the socio-political influence of Yemen's tribes as a counterweight to the governments in Sana'a and Aden. The tribal group still lived according to feudal pre-Republican social norms, and the Republican jurisdiction rarely ever affected them. When Colonel Ibrahim al-Hamdi rose to power in a bloodless coup in 1974, he immediately decided to disband the Ministry of Tribal Affairs in order to limit the authority of the tribes and to unify authority under one central leadership. It worked. Problem was, by doing so, Hamdi had essentially shut off Saudi Arabia's man access to Yemen's state apparatus and had to be dealt with accordingly. He was murdered in 1977 and a puppet figure was installed in his place. At every turn, indigenous Yemeni progress has been stifled and objected by the United Kingdom, the U.S., and Saudi Arabia. Fact check. Fact check comes from, again, the Saudi fucking... No faction, be it the Houthis or any group, has ever announced an institutional reintroduction of slavery. It is impossible to hold them accountable for the practices of isolated and desperately poor communities in the rural areas. Poverty remains to be the primary reason for these phenomena. So this actually goes through the fact that there is still slavery practiced in certain tribal areas, but given that there has never been real centralization, that it has never been legal. It hasn't been legal since 1962. But, you know, when you're getting fucking genocided and cooed all the goddamn time, it's a little difficult to fucking control that sort of thing. But the notion that the Houthis that actually restored the practice of slavery is an exclusive born out of this Saudi royal family newspaper. I wonder why they wrote this article while they were fucking, you know, I wonder why they wrote this article while they were fucking starving the Yemeni population. This isn't to say that the Houthis are wonderful people either, mind you, okay? For me, their domestic affairs, especially given the material conditions in Yemen born out of imperialism and born out of unimaginable poverty that you will never, never, ever in a million years be able to even comprehend, okay? Ironic because the Saudis also literally do practice slavery, but that's besides the point. I'm not going to get into that, okay? But the notion that like they're definitely going to clip this so it looks like you're defending the Houthis. I don't care, okay? The only defense of the Ansar Allah movement that I will ever give the Ansar Allah movement is in defense of their blockade and the implementation of a blockade in the Red Sea in order to stop Israel, in order to cripple Israel financially, which was successful, and to stop Israel from doing a genocide. The blockade ended when the ceasefire began. They even released the hostages, which ironically enough, Ethan doesn't feature in this video either. But it doesn't matter. He's like, oh, nobody knows what happened to the hostages. Oh, okay.
Forces which have been genociding the people of Yemen, and then states that they, not us, are clearly the bad guys. In Ethan's world, committing genocide against Arabs and Muslims is worthy of praise, as in Joe Biden or Yoav Gallant. But resisting genocide...
He says that you're dodging and the source does not matter when the facts are there. This is what him and Dan were saying about the Reddit article. It's the crazy level of propaganda on that channel. That's insane, dude. What do you mean the source doesn't fucking matter? They are the ones who are doing the fucking genocide. Also, this source doesn't even say what Ethan thinks it says. This is from 2014. This is the Saudi-backed government doing slavery, or at least not correctly fucking punishing slavery that was existing in the tribal parts of Yemen, in some of the most impoverished parts of Yemen. In one of the poorest countries on the fucking planet. The Houthis weren't even in power at this point. This is like an irrelevant thing to point to. It's like claiming Abraham Lincoln did slavery by pointing to the fucking Confederates, okay? And being like, the American government loved doing the practice of slavery under Abraham Lincoln. Fucking ridiculous.
Is bad. Ethan's coverage of the Houthis is so lazy that he gets basic facts wrong, like when he suggests that the crew of the Galaxy Leader is missing.
And once again, the crew is still MIA for over a year.
That crew has already been released, and prior to that, they were in contact with international organizations to verify their safety.
Like, this came after, this came before Ethan's video was released, if I'm not mistaken. Yemen's Houthis released crew of seized cargo ship Galaxy Leader.
And their location.
Next claim is that it's owned by an Israeli company. It's not. It's being chartered by a Japanese company, and the boat's owners are registered in the Isle of Man.
The owners of the Galaxy...
Oh, damn. No way, dude. I guess it's awfully suspicious that the Isle of Man seemingly, okay, the Isle of Man seemingly just has incredible, industrious individuals that love maritime law, okay? Yeah, Isle of Man, the powerhouse of industry. Or maybe Isle of Man is easier to fucking put on the ship manuscript. I don't know. Which one could it be? With a handshake from the Yemeni Army High Command, Yemeni jewelry and souvenirs from their host country, the majority Filipino crew of the seized Galaxy Leader car carrier left Yemen on board a chartered Omani airplane. The crew had only appraisal to grant their Yemeni hosts. Once again, this also came before Ethan releases content puke. He could have just, figured this out as well. It seems like he just omitted key details here.
Galaxy leader are Israeli. The boat is registered in the Isle of Man for tax purposes. This is embarrassingly lazy work.
Now let's move on to everybody's favorite terrorist organization, our friends in the north. It's Hezbollah. Where do I even begin?
You should begin with the decades-long Israeli occupation of Lebanon, where Israeli forces and Israeli-backed forces
I'm going to assume he's not going to mention any of that.
carried out repeated massacres of Palestinian refugees and Shia Muslims in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah formed to push out the Israeli occupation, and over the years Hezbollah has successfully repelled multiple Israeli invasions.
The practice is what is referred to as a flag of convenience. Thank you.
They participated in the slaughter of over 500,000 Syrian civilians to help a dictator, Bashar Assad, stay in power. They indiscriminately bombed over civilian centers, and they killed hundreds of thousands of civilians in what can only be described.
By the way, if Ethan can find any instance where I've defended Hezbollah's actions in Syria, okay, any instance where I have defended Hezbollah actions in Syria, I'm done. Okay, I'll shutter the operations. Okay, no clip chimps. Okay, no fucking clip chimps whatsoever, because I've never defended the actions of Hezbollah in Syria. For the record,
Described as a genocide.
Ethan baselessly attributes
Hezbollah did a genocide in Syria, but Israel is not doing a genocide.
the entire civilian death toll of the Syrian civil war.
By the way, does Ethan think Hezbollah has? Does Ethan think Hezbollah has air superiority? Does he think Hezbollah has fighter jets and the capabilities of deploying 2,000-pound bombs? Like when he says that, like, what does his audience go? They're like, yeah, that tracks.
Hezbollah. This is complete nonsense. Ethan discounts civilians killed by Assad's forces, rebel forces, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, America, Turkey, and others. Ethan, like a moron...
Okay, it's a little redundant to say rebel forces, ISIS, and then say Turkish forces. Just saying. It's all kind of under the same umbrella, all right? Like, they were all being trained by the same guys. Even the Kurds were being trained by the same guys, ironically enough. It was like a fucking 7-side civil war, and you got Hezbollah on one side for sure, okay? Let's say they're a separate entity. You have Bashar al-Assad, who's, awful, god-awful. You have Russian forces, and then you have other warring factions and terrorist groups that are literally fighting each other, and virtually all of them are either directly or indirectly by way of Turkey and NATO training, funded by the United States of America. Okay? It is insane. Ethan is also so easily called like 3 different things a genocide, but has not and will not say that Israel is committing a genocide on Palestinians. Yeah.
Attributes all deaths to Hezbollah simply because it suits his propaganda purpose. The quality of this argumentation is less than garbage.
They are a designated terrorist group by the U.S., by the EU.
Oh, okay. Oops. All right.
U.S. and EU have starved, raped, tortured, and murdered millions of Arabs and Muslims over the last several decades. Hezbollah formed to defend the people of Lebanon against such massacres, to defer to governments which have been actively committing genocide for the last year and a half, governments which have invaded and destroyed multiple countries across the Middle East.
That terms it's not a terms of service violation. By the way, Israel's currently invading South Syria because why not? I mean, I know. Why would they? Why would they not do that? Okay, they're unrestrained, and also there is definitely TOS violations here.
Whose armies rape and torture populations en masse, as the authority on who is and isn't a terrorist is a sick joke.
And now,
let's move to Hamas, the catalyst for this entire thing.
Like a true Israeli propagandist, Ethan doesn't consider the brutally violent apartheid state of Israel and the daily beatings, kidnappings, torment, harassment,
I think one of the craziest things about this is that if Ethan had like charitably listened to what I was trying to explain to him at the time in November 2023, he probably would have spared himself so much heartache and an entire year of like losing his mind as to why his fan base did not like these guys and had sympathies for these children. Okay. That's what's like it, because I was trying to explain to him to the best of my ability, and he was just like, la la la, I can't hear you. In certain circumstances, he literally did do that. Oh, like this isn't some fucking internet drama or beef or whatever, okay? Hey, for what it's worth, when people mention a random tweet you had about Syria forever ago and think you don't care about Syrians, please put a moment of this on the screen. Oh, yeah. We must help Syrian refugees. When I said, oh, hey, now the world cares about Syrian children, which is a tweet that an American Enterprise Institute government stooge always points to all the time to say that I don't give a fuck about Syria. I literally was writing this article at the time, and I was mad that people didn't give a fuck about Syrian refugees. It is a completely and utterly contextless fucking tweet to post when I literally have documented, like when I have personally, time and time again, defended refugees across the board, defended people's lives that have been destroyed. That's what's so crazy. But these people would rather live in a fucking lie. Oh, hey, everyone, it's time to care about dead babies in Syria. Social media told me so.